Thank you for downloading The Luminous Mind, episode 41.
We write our own story one experience at a time and one day at a time. And let's hope that as we're writing that story and those experiences, that we leave a legacy of love and achievement and confidence in this world that we live in.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Joy Howes. Joy is a retired teacher with over 30 years of experience. She has a master's in gifted education. She believes that the more experiences and opportunities that children have to develop their talents, the more confident they become. She loves teaching children to write in a way that touches their hearts. When children and adults learn to write in a meaningful way, they gain confidence and learn more about themselves. So welcome, Joy.
Thank you.
I've told our audience a little bit about you. Do you want to kind of expound upon that? Give us some background about your family and hobbies and passions, and then also your profession, what you're doing now.
Well, you have to know that I was raised in Alaska because that's a huge part of what makes me who I am. I was privileged to go to China back in 2000 and also 2003, and I adopted a girl and a boy. They are both 15. They're actually 8 days apart. And while I was never able to have biological children, I always tell them they were born from my heart. Another thing that really has shaped who I am is I lived in Thailand for over a year. And while I was there, I taught Vietnamese and Cambodian refugees to speak English.
Oh, wow.
So
that's neat.
That was huge in my life. And since I got my children when I was a little bit older and taught school, I had lots of time during the summer to travel. So I have had the privilege of experiencing a lot of different cultures, which I think, and a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different lifestyles, which has also really shaped who I am today.
Oh, that's
so
great.
Now I'm a retired teacher with two adorable 15-year-olds that keep me busier than I can even imagine. And I love working with kids, and I love coming up with fun things for kids to do. So here I am.
That is great. So can you tell me kind of what your educational philosophy has been?
If I could sum it up in a few words, it would be think out of the box. Since I worked a lot with gifted kids, and I think that's kind of even a fallacy, it's not just gifted kids that need to have opportunities to think out of the box. All kids do. I believe that the more we teach kids to learn on their own and to be facilitators of their own learning, the more successful they will be and the more they will love learning. So that's a big part of my philosophy, is getting kids to love to learn.
That is great. And I don't think we told our audience what you do professionally.
Well, I just had this awesome experience. I went to a blogging conference in Salt Lake this week, and I kind of tease people, and they would say, some of these people have 1.5 million viewers. And they would say, so how long have you been doing this? And I'd say, well, I've been blogging for about 24 hours now. So I am starting a blog. I mentor kids with writing, and I also do some reading tutoring. Honestly, though, Rebecca, my main job right now is being a mom to two very active, energetic teenagers.
That's a challenge enough, right? So
it is, yeah, they're a challenge.
So how do you think your paradigm and your educational philosophy kind of changed over time and with experience? What are some things that you learned through that?
Well, when I first started teaching, I used to always tell people that when I retired, I would do classes on raising self-esteem through creativity. And in a sense, what I'm doing now and focusing on now is just a deeper, meatier version of that. I don't know that everything has changed because my philosophies were pretty set when I first started teaching, but I think they've gotten deeper, broader, with more meat and more color. When I first started teaching, there was an educator called Howard Gardner. He was from Harvard. He came up with this thin idea of multiple intelligences, which is basically helping your kids to develop their talents and realize what your kids' talents are or they're smart. I believed it back then, and I believe it now. I just do it with more depth now.
And what do you mean by that? I remember at the conference that I went to, you had a board of different styles. What are those styles?
Well, there are three different things that I approach on my website. One is multiple intelligences, which are from Howard Gardner. The other is, and they're really fun. So much of what I do I base on Howard Gardner. The other one is thinking styles, Gregoric thinking styles. Whether you're abstract, random, concrete, sequential, and there are 4 of them. And those are just how we think, what we do. I'm very abstract random, so it's harder for me to focus in on one thing and stay there because I have so many different interests. And the third area that I really like to touch on, which I think is huge for all parents and educators, and that is, how do kids learn? And do they learn visually? Do they learn by doing, which is kinesthetic? Or do they learn by listening, which is auditory? So on my website and with the subscription service that I do, I make it a point to zero in on each one of those learning styles with different things that I do on the website. And I also include Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences, which to me are huge.
Why is that so important to learn the exact way that children learn, and then also to make sure you focus on some of those other intelligences?
Well, the intelligences include things like art smart, body smart, people smart, self smart, music smart, art smart, nature smart, math smart, and then a new one that he added just a few years ago, which is existential or spiritual, which really doesn't have anything to do with religion, but goes more into people that ask why. We have these philosophers that are always saying why we do things. I think it's important. Well, parents will ask me, how do I know what kind of smart my kids are? And I just tell them, when your kids are young, it really doesn't matter. You don't need to give them a test, although there are little worksheets that you can fill out and find out what their emphasis is. But you really don't need to do that. You just need to give them lots of experiences, and then they'll develop whatever their smarts are will develop, and you'll see them. For example, if someone's a writer, then you encourage them to write. But don't do that exclusively, because they need to be well-rounded. They need to know math. If a child is very self-smart and they understand themselves, that's great. I love it when kids are self-smart. But they also need to know how to understand other people. I think in a lot of ways, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences are good ways to develop different talents. They're also good ways to learn exactly where your children's strengths lie so that you can teach to and work towards those strengths. For example, if you have a very musical child, then let them write a song and put it to music. Whereas if you have kids that are much more logical or math-oriented, make sure you're giving them puzzles. If they're art smart, maybe a reading treasure hunt or scavenger hunt.
Those are great ideas.
They just come off the top of my head. People say, where do you come up with your ideas? And I say, well, after 30 years, they've done a few things.
You've got a little bit of experience.
A little experience.
So how do you think parents can, you're a writing mentor. How do you think parents can inspire creative writing in children and in themselves?
Rebecca, I absolutely love that question. I'm going to go slow. Write to your children, write with your children, write by your children, and write for your children. A lot of children, especially gifted kids, which I have one, and he's a challenge, they need to understand why somebody wants them to do something. And if they don't understand it, then chances are they're not going to grasp on and enroll themselves in whatever you want them to do. Let's start out by writing by or for your children. When they're young, write them notes. When my daughter used to beg me, and I had to say a lot of times I would forget, she would just want notes in her lunch bag. Even if all I said on the napkin was, Lily, I love you so much. Have a wonderful day. But when you write to your children, then they get a greater sense of why writing is important. When it comes to writing for your children, write their stories. I have both of my kids' stories written about their adoption. That's important. They're not as interested in it right now as they will be when they're a little bit older. When children are young, you need to write with them. Sit down. I used to tell my parents to get what I call the wiry diary. It doesn't need to be expensive. Go get a little spiral notebook and sit down at night and write with your kids what you've done or what they did during the day or what was important. I'll be really honest. I'm not a very good writer when it comes to I had, steak for dinner. For me, writing has more to do with feelings and emotions, and so those are the kinds of things I would encourage my kids to write. What was fun today? What was your best thing that happened today? Let's see. And then the other is that after you've done all of those things and continue to do them, then you just get kids to write. As a teacher, and I will tell you, it is so much easier to do this as a teacher than it is as a mom. I would give the kids 10 minutes a day, and I would say, you get to write for 10 minutes, and nobody talks. Writing time is quiet time. It's not a collaboration, because then if other kids are talking to them, that interrupts their train of thought. And I would say, that isn't fair. So I would start off with 10 minutes a day of you get to just write about anything you want to. And the kids at first would really argue and balk about it. I can't do that for 10 minutes. And after we had done that for a while, it was, no, 10 minutes can't be over yet. Because all these little bodies here furiously have pen to paper. That's where you start.
Yeah. I actually remember one of my teachers doing that, and it was, when she first had us do it, it was a challenge because I don't remember before that time anyone ever doing it. But then as I began to write, as we practice this every day and just writing in a journal, I really did see, I do believe like what you're saying, it gave me a reason why this was so important. Because even during that year, I was able to look back and go, oh, I remember when that happened. And it became a treasured item. I remember halfway through the year, I lost it, and I was like heartbroken.
Because I'm so glad to hear that.
Because it did mean a lot to me. Then I was almost like trying to go back and remember some of the things that happened so that I could have that, because I really saw the benefit of it. I will back what you say on that. I think it's very important. So you talked about, teaching writing and stuff like that. How do you teach the mechanics of writing without tears? The grammar and, the punctuation and all of that stuff that makes somebody a good writer. Do you really care about that, or does that just come naturally?
No, I don't think it does come naturally. Yes, I really care about it, and yes, it can come naturally. What I would do with my kids is I would sit down with them, and we would read back what they had written. And I would say, I would make obvious pauses where they should have a period. And I would say, what do you need there? And they would say, period. I would ask them questions like, what can you tell me about this that makes it more interesting? And so a lot of it was just hands-on writing with them. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a paid affiliate of Easy Grammar, but I have used their program, and I love it. It is an excellent program. So I should become an affiliate of theirs. I like their program so much.
So you said Easy Grammar.
It's just called Easy Grammar.
Okay.
Something else that I think works really well, and I hesitate to tell you to do it on their 10-minute writing because you want that to be just wonderful, positive, touchy-feely stuff. You don't want to go through and make a lot of corrections on what they're writing because you don't want to stifle them or stop them. But something else that's very effective is just have them write sentences and then go back through and correct them. For example, they might just write a little paragraph about an apple, and then put the sentences on a whiteboard. If you're doing a large group, if you're doing a small group, just go through with them and say, okay, take a look at this. What can you do better? What do you need to correct on this? And then ask them questions. How do you make this more interesting?
Or even if you have sentences, is that a good idea?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. See, Rebecca, that goes back. I could do that as a teacher. As a parent working with your kids, when I said to write for your kids, what a great opportunity. Make some mistakes. And I really hate to admit this. I will go down and if you put this on the air, I will deny it forever. Last night, I was helping my 15-year-old, who is gifted, correct an expository talk on placebo. And I had to clarify with him over and over if he was using the word affect and affect, with an E and an A correctly. And so get over yourself. If they're right and you're wrong, say, oh, I'm so glad you figured that out. Or the other thing you say is, yeah, I knew that. I was just making sure you did. But seriously, learn from your kids.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with learning from your kids.
My kids love to catch me with a mistake like that.
Oh, sure. It's okay. It makes us human. We're not all knowing. I wish I was, but I'm not.
Well, and I guess that's what I loved about just writing for that 10 minutes a day. I think it was the first time that I was given permission to write and not have to have it be perfect. You know what I mean? Just to be able to put my thoughts down. So
Exactly. That's what I said. I hesitate to tell you to go back in and use that as a learning experience. But along with the easy grammar, they also have what they call daily grams, where you can just go in with your kids, and they teach everything from, well, like they'll have sentences that are done incorrectly, and you correct them. They'll have examples of homophones. They'll have when you add ES to a word, when you add S. They have everything, and you can just go in and practice those with your kids. And that's also really effective.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to correct somebody else's work than your own, until you're comfortable with that.
It is.
Before we go on, let us take a minute and hear about our sponsors.
Hey, Firestarters, are you looking for a new way to listen to the Luminous Mind? Try listening on Stitcher. Haven't heard of Stitcher? Think of it as radio on demand. You can listen to the Luminous Mind anytime, anywhere. There is no downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Just stream your favorite podcasts such as The Luminous Mind. Stitcher is available on iOS, Android, Nook, iPad, and also from your favorite internet browser. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And make sure you rate and review The Luminous Mind so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.
Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Joy House on writing. So you talked about having a blog. Do you have a blog or a curriculum or?
What I created and have been creating for a long time, my website is called incrediblyconfidentkids.com. And there's a lot of information on there about multiple intelligences and learning styles and all of those kinds of things. But I also created a monthly curriculum that I really, really like. It's theme-based. I don't know about you, Rebecca, but with my kids, I wish that I had started each year of their schooling with a 3-ring binder and page protectors. And when they brought something home that was awesome, I wish I had just stuck it in there, and then I would have a complete history of all of their schooling. And because I didn't do that, I felt such a loss because I don't have a lot of those things. I decided to create what's called an Explorer's Notebook, and that's basically all it is you get a 3-ring binder, make sure you have page protectors, and then for me, each month has a theme. Like in January, it was, I write my own story 1 page at a time. February was Random Acts of Kindness. March will be Dr. Seuss's birthday and Reading Across America. In the curriculum that I've created, there's always a multiple intelligence link, there's a writing link, and there's a reading link for each month and activities to do along with that. I think one of the things about it that I like the very best, though, and I didn't really realize when I started this that this would be my favorite, but I have a calendar. And for example, just as a real short introduction, did you know that on January 1st, and I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know the year, that's when Ellis Island was first started?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, people will say, well, how can you use this with younger kids and with my high schooler? And it's easy. With a younger child, you read in one of the books and you talk about Ellis Island. Maybe you share a story briefly at the dinner table about one of your ancestors who immigrated to the United States. With older kids, and I love timelines. I think timelines are one of the most effective ways to teach because they're visual, and everybody learns by seeing and doing. But you create a timeline of Ellis Island, and then, some of the incidences that have happened in between, what's happened with immigration, what happened with the Chinese coming to the West Coast, or what happens with Europeans coming to the East Coast. And then you really get deep and you start doing some research on what's happening with immigration and President Obama right now.
And that's a good way to start early, start young and then move up. That's great.
Well, and the calendar is filled with ideas on ways that you can take daily events and turning them into learning experiences. Your kids won't even know they're learning because they'll be having so much fun. But can I just add something on that? I'm being kind of facetious when I say your kids won't know they're learning. From my experiences, kids really like nuts and bolts, nitty-gritty learning in a fun way. They would much rather do that where they feel like there's a purpose than they would the do-it-yourself crafts and the fluffy stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, my middle son was actually telling me that. We had two different places that we used to go, and he told me one felt fluffy, like, just dumb stuff that they talked about, but he liked the other place. A lot of the kids there talked about very, in-depth things of what books they were reading and what they had learned from that, and that just really shocked me. It would just seem like the easy thing, the easy place would have been the funner, but he liked the place. And I had this confirmed by my other two children that are even younger than him, that they like going places where they're challenged, where they're thinking and they're pushed. And
exactly. And if it's in a fun way, then it's even better.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, well, hopefully you've gotten enough of my personality to know that I think learning should be fun, and delving into things should be fun. It also should have meat and substance to it.
Great. So what services do you offer families then? We talked about how you mentor. Do you do that online, or do you offer other things?
I have not started it online. The main way that I have been mentoring up to this point has been through writing groups. I've had so much interest, though, that I'm seriously considering adding an online writing mentoring program, which would be called an authentic author. And going back to getting kids, how kids can write creatively. A lot of times kids need a prompt, Rebecca. So one of my very favorite prompts in the world is just simply the two words, I am. And then let kids go from there. I am what? Is that something that your children? So maybe a little bit of guiding from you can help.
Yeah.
So that's an area that I'm going to be developing. And I do tutor, but that's very much a one-on-one, at-home kind of thing, not over the internet. I do offer writing groups if you have a group of about 5 to 6 kids, not more than that, and you're local here in Utah County. I will offer writing groups. At this point, the main thing that I'm offering is my subscription service. And, the subscription service is the calendar, the monthly theme. It talks about how to use different multiple intelligences. It's really very comprehensive. I went to a conference a few months ago, and one of the ladies came up to me, and she said, you have 30 years of experience. I look at all this and wonder how I can do it. And so as I've been, talking to different people, I think that you can look at the amount of information on each monthly subscription and think, oh my goodness, this is so much. So I decided, that's part of the reason that I decided to start a blog, to make it easier for parents to understand, what exactly it is that they need to do, they can do, and how they can have fun with it. And the other thing is, for anyone who does enroll in my subscription program, I'm only an email away. If they have a question, all they need to do is email me, and I'm more than glad to work things through with them or help them think of ways to use the program more effectively.
And the richness of your content isn't meant to, everything to be used, right? I mean, you do that so that people can pick and choose what works best for them and their children, and I would imagine.
Exactly.
Okay.
When I taught with the district that I taught in, I wrote a lot of curriculum, and teachers would look, it was an integrated program where you integrated science and social studies with reading, with art, with dance, with as many modalities as were appropriate. And a lot of the teachers would look at it, because a lot of teachers are very concrete, sequential. You do it this way, this way, this way, and which I am totally not, you've probably figured out. And they would get so frustrated because they're like, I can't do all this. And we would say, you don't have to do all of this. You take what you're comfortable with, you take what you can do, and you run with it, and you have fun with it. If you can't find the exact book, don't worry about it. Find a book that works for you, or
great.
Find a book that's appropriate for what you want to do. But so much of it is meant to give people ideas. And I really encourage, especially at the beginning, to take one or two things and go with that. And the calendar is such a good place to start because it can be so simple.
Yeah.
Even just talking about it for 10 minutes at dinner. And besides that, I bet you don't know why they started Donut Day, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, everybody probably thinks that it was compliments of Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme. Well, I'm here to tell you it was not. It has its roots back during World War II and the Red Cross.
Oh, that's interesting.
I know.
That's great.
Yeah, so anyway, there are a lot of things like that that are just really fun that you can do with your kids, and they're learning at the same time.
Great. So what are some successes that you've seen with families that have used your products and ways that they've benefited?
The successes that I have seen to this point, because you need to remember, it's very, very new. I just really launched it in January. The successes I've seen are with kids that I have taught, because the things that I use with families are the same types of things that I used with the kids that I taught. They were more able to think out of the box and think for themselves. They were more creative and took more charge of their own learning, which is what we want our kids to do.
Yeah.
If we're hand-feeding them everything, then they never learn how to learn. And in today's world, they've got to learn how to learn. Something else that, because I use these same methods with the kids that I taught, something else that I really, really appreciated seeing is they would have a subject that interested them. And I always tell them, go home, talk to your mom and dad. I don't ever tell them to get on Google by themselves because I have no idea where they're going to end up. But I tell them to go in with a mom, a dad, an older brother or sister or whoever and do some research. If you really love this book about chameleons, do some research. Find out some more about it, and then come back and tell us about it. And how would you present that? Would you do it as a skit? Would you do it as a puppet show? Would you want to make a book out of it? What would you want to do? Those are some of the successes that I have seen with using these methods, and that is just turning kids on to learning.
Yeah, just more creative. Yeah, and they're excited about it.
They are excited about it.
That's exciting. So what are some of your long-term goals then? I mean, obviously you've got your teenagers that you're trying to raise, but what are some goals that you have for yourself?
My goals for myself right now is my son will be leaving in just a little over 2 years to serve a mission for our church. And I always promise myself, I get really emotional about this kind of stuff. Oh, I don't want him to go. But anyway, I promised myself years ago when I lived in Thailand and worked with the refugees. We also went into orphanages. And my long-term goal is that when Christopher takes off and serves his mission, that my daughter and I will take probably close to a year, just depending on, what's happening in life and what I can work out. But we will go to Thailand and work in an orphanage for a few months. I want us to go to China. I want her to have a little bit better idea of what her culture is all about. And we will go and we'll teach English in China. Those are some of my goals for the next, 5 years.
Those sound amazing.
I know, doesn't it? I'm
Yeah.
putting it out there. So, bar unforeseen circumstances, that's what I want to do. While he serves a mission, I want us to do the same thing.
That is great. That would be a very cultural, enriching experience for her. And so that sounds wonderful. So if you could leave a legacy, what would it be?
The legacy that I would like to leave with families, and I get very passionate about this, is that the best way that we can raise our children is by giving them the confidence and the knowledge that they can see for themselves who they are, that they know they're loved, and that through this love, they have the courage to reach out to other people and in other situations that they can give. Because once our kids are secure with themselves, they can give to others.
Yeah, exactly. I think when a child feels confident in who they are, the sky's the limit then. There's no stopping what they can do, and they can be incredible things. I got a little teary with that too, so that was great.
Oh,
thanks.
No problem. That's what I try to do. I want everybody to cry when they're talking to me.
So what are some,
But seriously, I really feel strongly about that. Our world's a scary place. We write our own story one experience at a time and one day at a time. And let's hope that as we're writing that story and those experiences, that we leave a legacy of love and achievement and confidence in this world that we live in.
That is wonderful. Thank you. So before we say goodbye, do you have some parting words of advice for our listeners? And then also be sure to give us your contact information, how we could get a hold of you.
Okay, parting words of advice. Oh, now I'm going to get really teary-eyed. My kids are almost grown, Rebecca, and the whole adoption story is quite another thing. But I remember when that lady stood up and said, "Where's Lily Goo's mommy?" Like it was yesterday. And in 2 years, 2.5 years, she's an adult on her own. Save her. every moment you have with your children. Enjoy them. Record the experiences that are important and savor every moment that you have with your kids, because it's true. They're gone. You turn around and you blink and they're grown up. And then, you can still have experiences with them, but they're not right there with you. So love and savor those experiences and do things. And don't just go to Disneyland. Go out and get your feet dirty. My daughter, I let my kids choose. We're taking an extended trip this summer. In fact, we're going from Utah to Nebraska to Tennessee to Georgia to visit, and then on to Florida to visit some very close family, and then visit also a family that Christopher, their son was in the same orphanage as Christopher. Do out-of-the-way things. My kids could care less about going to Disney World, but to go to the beach and go to the Florida Keys and see the crocodile or the alligators, that's what they want to do. So I guess part of what I would say is do natural things out in nature with your kids. Help them explore their world, see what's there. And I'm not saying anything against Disney World and Disneyland. Believe me, they love it there. Don't make that the focus of your life. Let them experience nature in all of its beauty.
Yeah, like we were talking about before, things that really matter, stuff that creates richness in their life maybe. So.
Right. Can I put a plug in for something else I'm going to do?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited about this. Remember, I'm abstract plan, so I can have 9,000 ideas going through my head. I am creating an adoption blog that's called Courage to Adopt. So if you like me on Facebook, incrediblyconfidentkids.com, I will update when I get the blog up and going. The name of my Facebook page is just Courage to Adopt. So if you have adopted, have friends who have adopted, or have an interest in adoption, please like our page. And what it will mainly end up being is, it was going to be just stories like me of mothers that have adopted. And then I had adult adoptees coming out of the woodwork and saying, wait, nobody shares my story. So I'm thinking, okay, we'll add adults that have been adopted, and then what myself as a mother can learn. And then I can't help it. I get all these pictures of these little adorable kids from China. So I have to advocate on there for kids who need to be adopted.
Well, I know my listeners, I know several of them that have been on here have adopted children. So I know there's a market there for that. So
send them
definitely.
My way.
Yes.
Send them my way.
Yeah. And what a legacy too, to give somebody a life that otherwise, an amazing life that otherwise may not happen without a loving family. That's great. Thank you. And what is your contact information? How can we get a hold of you? You've said it a few times before, but...
The easiest way is through my regular Gmail, which is just joykids3 with the digit 3 at gmail.com. You can also contact me through incrediblyconfidentkids.com.
That is wonderful. Well, I'm
on Facebook. For both of them, I'm on Facebook, so that's really easy.
Well, I'm definitely going to check out your writing curriculum. Just sounds amazing. Definitely more family-oriented in the fact that parents need to get involved and be part of it and not just expect that something, out of their children, but actually for themselves, be a lifelong learner. So thank you so much, Joy, for talking to me. I've had a wonderful time speaking with you.
So have I. You weren't even scary, so thank you.
Well, I'm so glad about that. Thanks so much.
You betcha.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Joy House and her writing curriculum, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Also, be sure to subscribe to our free email list so you can receive our weekly audio blog, The Spark. We would love to have you join our program. Do so by going to the scheduling tab and become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website, theluminousmind.net. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+. Get our audio content on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.